Welcome to Forged in the Fires podcast with Fireman Rob. Being a fireman, father, veteran, husband, world record holder, and Ironman, he brings stories of experience to impact your life while challenging you to live it. What do you want from your life? Why do you want it? Are you willing to go through the challenges to get there? If you have the courage to take that first step, let this podcast be the catalyst to start your fire while you bring the resilience to make it continue to burn. Our lives are made up of moments called right nows. So let's get started. Forged in the Fires podcast with your host, Fireman Rob, begins now.
Today's guest is an amazing individual who continues to be amazing to not only his community, but all the things that he did in the military. He retired as a major general in the U.S. Army. And now he is the president and CEO of Special Operations Warrior Foundation. So excited to have you on here today. Thank you so much, Clayton Hutmacher. How are you doing today, sir?
You got it. You nailed it. Good. Good. Thank you very much, Rob.
You know, it's one of those things you got to make sure you get the guest name right, or else it goes just south from there.
Well, I'm pretty sure you couldn't butcher it more than it's been butchered throughout my lifetime. Trust me.
I can only imagine. There's so much to get into. I want to start with the man behind the uniform, how that all started. I think it's such an amazing story of you joining the Marines at age 17, high school dropout, living in a foster home. Tell me about that person that joined the United States Marines at that time. Tell me about that, Clayton.
Well, I clearly was having a rough patch of it there. And
yeah.
I was fortunate that the foster family that took me in was very loving and were actually the parents of a classmate of mine when I was in high school that had passed away in a motorcycle accident. And
oh, wow.
Yeah, they were really supportive of me, and I'm still very close to them to this day. Amazing. And the father had been in the Marine Corps in the Korean conflict.
Okay.
And so that, I knew that I needed a kick in the butt. I needed something to get me, focused and on the straight and narrow. And I knew it wasn't going to be painless, but definitely needed. So the Marine Corps did not disappoint.
I was going to say, you went the painful route.
Yes, it was not the warm hug and, welcome to the team and kumbaya kind of reception I was hoping for. But, all, really beneficial for me and really put me on a new trajectory in life, which for I will always be grateful.
How did at that age? I mean, that's what's always amazing to me is individuals, young individuals. There's a lot of people who really are at that age and have difficulty like figuring out what clothes to wear. And you have these individuals that are going into the Marines, into the Air Force, into the Army, into the Navy, Coast Guard, whatever it is, at that age and taking on that responsibility of serving their country. When you look back at it, what was that feeling that you had of being able to do that? Was it kind of a post like 10 years that you look back and you go, gosh, that was what I needed exactly?
Yeah, I would say that it was post for me. It was definitely looking in a rearview mirror. I would characterize my motivation to join the service as frankly selfish and desperate. Okay. I knew I needed to serve a cause greater than self at some level, and I knew that without some sort of intervention, even though it was instigated by me signing on the dotted line, that I was going to have trouble later in life. And It wasn't until years later, probably after I became an officer in the Army flying in Special Ops Aviation, when I truly, I guess, got to another level on service. And I realized that serving a cause greater than self had so many rewards that I couldn't even contemplate when I first joined. And which really was what motivated me to continue to serve after I took off the uniform in my current capacity.
That's what's amazing. I mean, over, nearly 41 years, and a lot of it as a special operations aviator. How did that transition go from Marine, really boots on the ground? I mean, you guys in the Marines, I know it's a hard go. And how did you transition from that to saying, hey, you know what, I want to get into special operations, I want to be an aviator? What was that transition like for you?
Well, I would like to say that it was part of my grand plan, but it really wasn't.
Hey, you can say it. You can say it. Nobody will know.
Okay, I can say, yeah. Well, only me, but would know. But I was actually stationed at Marine Barracks, Whidbey Island, Washington, a naval air station up there, and I saw that another Marine had applied for this warrant officer flight program in the Army, and he had a brochure, and I asked him about it, became interested in it, and ultimately applied. Very lengthy process, testing and physicals and all sorts of things. And actually I never thought I'd get accepted, but I did. And so I initially served in the Army as a warrant officer pilot, which, the distinction between a commissioned officer and a warrant officer from the outside looking in is probably subtle, but they're different. Warrant officers are technicians. They're very technically focused on their job.
Yep.
Normally very technical jobs. And commissioned officers are more of a generalist, commanders and such. And so I served a couple of years in the 101st Airborne as a warrant officer pilot, and heard about this secret unit that was on Fort Campbell. Not so secret anymore, but back then it was. And and I put in my application, and they just laughed at me. You don't have enough time on the rock. There's no way you can fly with us. And I just kept, persistence, right? Better, more valuable than talent, at least in my case. And,
I love that. Yeah.
And anyway, and so I also realized that from my days as a non-commissioned officer that I missed the leadership aspect. So I went to officer candidate school just shy of 10 years in the military. And then when I graduated, the special ops community gave me a shot to try out for the assessment. And I made it, and basically spent all but a couple of assignments in the special ops world from that point forward.
Wow. And now a lot of people hear special ops, and they, their whole understanding of that is the movies and everything like that. But it's really it's a community that is so tight knit and really looks out for each other, not just on missions, but after missions and post retirement. And that kind of leads me into what you're doing now, that Special Operations Warrior Foundation. Tell me more about that community's tie to each other and that unwavering bond, because not only do you go into austere environments when you're on missions, it's also after missions.
Yeah, I think people that you share difficult times with, that you sacrifice together, you suffer together, you serve together, whether that's in, and for us, it's mainly in combat. You achieve a bond with those people, or you make a bond with your comrades and friends that is hard to replicate. And I see a similar bond between folks that go to the service academies, whether it be the West Point or Annapolis or the Air Force Academy. They suffer together. They get hazed, or not hazed is probably,
we can't say that word. We can't say that word.
They can't say that, but
they get help to understand what reality is, right? That's what it is.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Enhanced learning perhaps might be another word for it. So
I like that.
Yeah. So, you go through that crucible together, and you just see each other at your best and your worst. And I think with that becomes really strong relationships. And that's that, that type of relationship is what really binds us together in the special ops community. And I also feel like the military, they honor their fallen with dignity and grace and sincerity for sure. But the special ops community takes it to another level. And I think part of that is that we don't turn over as fast in the special ops community. You tend to stay there longer, which helps with that enduring commitment to the families of those that we've lost. But when I was the 160th Special Ops Aviation Regiment commander, we had lost more people than any other like-size organization in the special ops community. And I'm pretty sure in the military at that time.
Wow.
And we did a great job, and we still do a great job of honoring the service and sacrifice of those that have fallen and the families that have left behind. But, keep in mind, we have a mission to do, just like you as a firefighter. You lose someone, you grieve for them, but you have to continue with your mission. But this organization, the Special Ops Warrior Foundation, when I was active, long before I ever contemplated retiring, much less coming to work here, I saw what they did for our families. They take a huge burden off of their shoulders, and they take care of the education of their children. Depending on their age, it starts as early as preschool and goes through college. They fund it every step of the way. It's not just a college scholarship program. And it's that enduring commitment that I respected so much when I was active, and now I'm so honored to be a part of, after I've hung up the uniform, to be able to serve our community in that capacity and have such an impact. It frankly is an honor. It goes to our earlier discussion about serving a cause greater than yourself.
Yeah, I look at the numbers, and you can go to specialops.org. I think it's such an amazing part of being part of something bigger, like you said. I mean, 1,225 wars, fatalities since 1980 in the special operations. These numbers, I love these. 1,034 children are eligible, 481 college graduates. I mean, and you think about these children, they, in the special operations community, as a special operator, you don't see your family as much as as other people get to see their family. And so it's even a harder, thing for them on their children, right? Than to have them 100%. Lost in battle. Talk a little more about that so that people can understand that. I mean, I love that you said one of your greatest accomplishments is marrying a woman of your dreams and raising three great sons. Tell me about how that really shaped who you are and the importance of that in that community.
Yeah, I think, I used to tell troops that I served with and officers that are, ambitious and motivated to succeed and to go to the next level. I said, that's great. And I was the same way, certainly motivated in that way. But I said, don't forget to invest in your family, because at the end of the day, the military is going to kick you to the curb for a newer, younger model. I mean, they're going to cheat on you, You're like, hey, you're not part of the solution, you're out, and that's the way it should be, it should be, because we serve the nation and we defend the nation. But your family is who's going to be there for you over the long term. And my wife, I actually flew as an exchange pilot with the Air Force Special Ops Command down in Hurlburt Field, Florida. And that's where I met my wife. She was my squadron intel officer.
Oh my God.
And yeah. And, of course, she latched onto the first only Army guy she saw, I guess.
The best looking one.
But she probably has a different, she has a different rendition, I'm sure, remembrance of that. But
she did her intel.
And, we served. Yeah, she did. She did her vetting, I guess. And, when she got pregnant with our second son, I was in a classified unit at the time. And I remember she wrote me, we were sitting on the couch talking one evening, and We had one son, and he was spending 55 hours a week in daycare. And because she was working, I was deployed over in the Balkans at the time. And she said, look, I'm not a good officer because I have to leave work every time our son has a sniffle or a fever.
Right.
And I'm not a good mother.
Oh,
and I want to be good at something, and I'd rather be a good mother. And she sacrificed her own career, to which I am grateful and respectful to this day. And she raised, we had 2 more sons, and she raised them. And,
wow.
in fact, actually, our foundation expanded our eligibility to active duty special ops families that lose a non-serving spouse for exactly this reason, because they are serving.
Oh, yeah, by far.
And right, yeah. And so, to me, these families, especially the kids, didn't sign up for this. They were born into it. And let me tell you, when the approved hours for notifying a family that they've lost a loved one is from 6 a.m. till 10 at night.
Right.
And sometime when they lose someone, you get a knock on the door, and there's a unit representative and a chaplain standing there, and they tell you very succinctly and directly that your loved one is never coming home. And from that moment forward, everything changes. Yeah. Everything's different, you know, and it's it's so traumatic and so devastating to be able to have this positive impact on these kids and give them every opportunity to reach their full potential. We should do no less as a nation, and certainly I'm proud to be part of this organization that does that every day.
I love that. That's so well said, and something that a lot of people I don't think understand, or sometimes they don't want to understand, like the cost that people put out on the line to be able to have this work and to be able to have the opportunity to do what people do in the United States all the time. And so thank you so much for doing that. I greatly appreciate it. Make sure you go to specialops.org. There's many different ways that people can give, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's all there. And there's a little tab thing up on the right side of the website, and take a look. But it is a great organization. We're good stewards of the resources we're provided, and we're having a very positive, significant and positive impact on the lives of these families that have served their nation.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Now, I want to kind of go back into your mindset when you were in the military, in special operations. There was an operation, combat mission called Reindeer. Are you able to tell me Are you able to tell me a little bit more about that?
Sure. Yeah. Normally, the quiet.
Normally, no, but
thing,
yes.
But this has been publicized and been in unclassified periodicals since. So we were over I was in Baghdad in 2003. And, back then we were going after the deck of cards, if you remember that.
Oh, yeah. Yep. I remember the deck of cards.
Yeah. And so that was our focus, right? It was personality-based key leaders. And this target came up that was referred to us by the headquarters, the conventional headquarters, multinational Corps Iraq, I think. And that there was a terrorist camp out west near a town called Rawha. I think it's Rawha.
Yep.
And that they were going to do something bad. We didn't have a lot of the overhead reconnaissance assets that we now have, but they picked up on some nefarious activities there. And I remember I was going out on a mission that night, and the Air Force general that was heading up our task force called me in and said, just take a look at this. And anyway, I looked at it. Clearly they were bad guys. And I just told a couple of my pilots, I said, hey, let's just do a straw man plan. If we got to execute this thing in the next, 24, 48 hours, how we would do it. And we probably spent an hour on it, or just, this is how we do it.
Right. And
then we went off and flew our missions. And I usually we were on reverse cycle, so I wouldn't go to bed till 6 or 7 in the morning after everybody had been recovered. And they woke me up at 11 and said, it's your mission. And
Oh, wow.
Luckily, we had done a little bit of planning, and we had a company from 2nd Ranger Battalion with us. That was our ground assault force. And we did what we call a half GAF, which is HAF stands for Helicopter Assault Force, and GAF stands for Ground Assault Force. So we did a simultaneous assault on the ground and from the air on this camp, and it turned into quite the slugfest there for a couple of hours.
Couple hours. Wow.
And there were over 100 terrorists. Most were, probably about half of them were Iraqis, but there were at least, close to half that were from other countries.
Oh, wow.
And they were in the final hours of preparing for martyrdom. They were going to go out in small teams and attack coalition bases and Iraqi bases throughout the country. And we caught them just before they did. And
that's amazing.
There were we had no KIAs, but we did have a young Ranger, Matt Waters, who I'm still friends with to this day, lives in Georgia, that served as a police officer after he got out, that lost a leg to an RPG, hit him just below the knee when he was clearing an objective. We medevaced him out on one of my aircraft, basically saved his life. One of our medics did. Wow. And it was, I think we saved a lot of lives that day. Oh, yeah. I remember coming into the LZ, the HLZ, the helicopter landing zone, and tracer fire was coming out of this wadi, which is like a little, ditch or a valley. Yep. And it was coming out my right side, and I had a big chest plate on in front because you anticipate getting shot in the chest. Yeah. And I saw what was happening, and I quickly loosened my straps and slid that
right to the back.
Around to the right. Yeah, I was like, I think I'm pretty good up front here. It's just these guys to the right that are, sort of bothering me a little bit.
And thanks for having the tracer, so I understood where it was coming from.
Exactly. That's the good news is you got the tracer. The bad news is there's, depending on the ratio, there's about 6 that are unlit in between each one of those tracers. Yeah. So it's P for plenty on that stuff. But anyway, we got in there. We saved a lot of lives, and it was a significant mission that I think that really helped us, especially during those initial phases of the war, the effort to get established. That would have been devastating to have these small suicide teams all over the country blowing themselves up and killing Americans and coalition forces.
And it's so valuable to have that, that strength and that power in the individuals. Like, I mean, we've talked about it most of this time, but in the power of the individuals. I mean, like you said, a few hours, you're talking about this operation, and it's bringing together all of these individuals who are in different branches, different, units, whatever, and coming together to have something as complicated. If you actually put it out like a play in football for people, it'd be a very complicated play, wouldn't it?
Oh yeah, definitely. And the way we're able to do that, especially on short notice, without a lot of rehearsals, no rehearsals essentially, other than a sand table exercise in the hangar before we walk to the aircraft, is it's what I call reps and sets. You're constantly training together. You're brutal in the debriefings to make, if we deviate from our standard procedures, you call each other on it professionally. Right. And what that creates is a force that a ground and Air Force separate units that operate almost seamlessly together. And that's, when I was with the 160th Special Ops Aviation Regiment, we didn't just fly Army, Special Ops. We flew all of them. We flew SEALs, Marine, MARSOC Raiders, Air Force Special Tactics, Army Green Berets, Army Rangers. And we were able to do that. And it was transparent to us because we had such a strong standard operating procedure, and we had the luxury of focus and training by training with the same units and the same individuals over and over again in extremely demanding and challenging training scenarios.
How powerful is what you've learned in the military to be able to translate into your 3 sons exactly what you just said. How hard has it been as a dad to do that over being in the military and being able to do that with your subordinates? Is it harder as a dad?
Yeah, well, certainly for me it was. My sons, I have three great sons. Two have already graduated from college and are doing very well. One's married. My youngest graduates from Clemson here in a couple of months. And the credit for that goes to my wife. She got out of the Air Force. She sacrificed her career because she, like I had said earlier, about serving a cause greater than self. That's exactly what she did. And our sons are doing great. And I wish I could take credit for that. I mean, I tell people they're they're engineers and stuff like that, our kids, Yeah. And I said, when people say, "Oh, you got three great sons," I'm like, well, their mother was a math major. She's very intelligent. Leaving the toilet seat up, not cleaning up the room, like that's totally me. They get that from me. All the, the really valuable skills of engineering and all that they get from their mother's side of the gene pool. I was not the strong contributor on that part. So,
I love that.
So it is harder though,
yeah,
Rob.
It is
because in the military, look, in the special ops community, we're loyal to each other, but we're loyal to the institution as well. And we owe it to the nation to maintain that, be brutal on the standard. Doesn't mean that we're not compassionate, because we are. But look, if somebody isn't meeting the standard, they're a danger to themselves, to the unit, and most importantly, they could endanger the mission. And you have to make hard calls and make cuts. It's like the pro sports teams. You clearly see that's a meritocracy at its finest. And that's what we have in the special ops community, the same thing. And if we ever lose that, it'll be to the detriment of the nation. So in my mind, it was easier because you're more unbiased than it is as a parent, right? So that's my takeaway. It's harder as a parent, I think.
I love that philosophy, and I think it's so powerful. I think it's why a lot of what you're talking about with the special operations and the ability to be able to adapt and the training and I loved how the professional correction. I know that professional correction. There's not a lot of people that can understand that kind of professional correction. What is that ability, that mindset to be able to be humble? Because there's a lot of type A's in special ops.
Oh, yeah, huge. And, I mean, there's no shortage of egos for sure.
No, there's no shortage of egos, but you don't usually see that, or you get knocked down in training, or you get knocked down when something happens, but you don't see that ego interrupt the objective. You don't see that ego interrupt that brotherhood, sisterhood, whatever it is, to be able to push forward. What is that mindset? How do people captivate that mindset and be able to go and use it in their own lives?
Well, I think, I think part of it is the organizational culture of SOF and why it was established. And, there's several soft truths is what we call them. But the most important one is that people are more important than hardware, and that you invest in people. And, and when you invest in people, that doesn't, it doesn't mean that, everybody gets a hug or it's T-ball and everybody gets a trophy. It's not that, I mean, you cut people all the time, but your emphasis is on people. And once they make the cut, you invest in them. And I think, you establish this culture of accountability, and SOF, in my, opinion, they are great learning organizations. I look at how we conducted combat operations in Iraq and Afghanistan shortly after 9/11, and how we adapted to the enemy, that action, counteraction. And we did that because we had, one, the bedrock of all that was fantastic people specially selected and trained, but also you had a culture of accountability and learning. And we ruthlessly, did the forensics on each mission, especially when it went bad, and how we can learn from that and how we can become better. And I think, the truly great organizations out there are those that have those attributes, that are learning organizations that, check their egos at the door.
Yeah.
I had a guy tell me early on when I was a Marine, he said, it's either a verbal attack if somebody's criticizing you, or it's constructive criticism. And if it's a verbal attack, you just push it aside. Okay, that's just, somebody's telling me, hey, I don't like you because you're ugly, or you dated my girlfriend, or whatever. But if it's constructive criticism, you put that in a separate bin, and you while it's painful, you look at it and you say, is there some there? Is there something I learned from it? And I told my sons this, going back to the parent thing. I said, look, the things that I needed to hear the most in my life to be a better father, a better husband, a better soldier, a better leader were the things I wanted to hear the least.
That's huge. I love that. That's a great statement right there. I'm going to use that on my son.
Good luck. Like I said, I take total credit for them leaving the toilet seat up and not making their bed, but that's where that's the limits of my contribution.
I love that. I love that. Make sure you go to specialops.org and contribute, because it's such a great organization. I've got 3 questions for you. I always end the podcast the same way. You ready for them?
Well, we'll see.
I know. This is going to be an interesting one. So if you could go back to your 18-year-old self and give yourself one piece of advice, what would that be?
Think less about self and more about others.
Love that. Yeah. I that's and that's huge, thinking about what your situation was. So that's awesome.
Yeah, I don't know that I would have listened, but I would.
Yeah, that wasn't even part of the question. So I don't think half of us would listen to our older selves. Okay, the second question is, everybody goes through challenges in their life, and if you could give them 2 pieces of advice or 2 habits that they could incorporate into their daily life, whether they do it in the morning, evening, lunchtime, whatever it is, but 2 habits that they can incorporate into their life to continue to move forward, what would those 2 things be?
For me, it would be, one would be set a time to nurture your spiritual self, right? Whatever that is.
Right.
And, I'm a Christian, and I spend time every morning, in praying, and it's a vital part of my day. And the second thing I would say is spend time taking care of yourself physically. I'm committed to physical fitness, I'm not I'm not in the shape I was in many years ago when I was active, but I'm still committed.
Yeah,
and I think being consistent in both of those areas every day is so important, because consistency, to me, it wins out over talent. Just being consistent, it's been a game changer for me in both those areas, for sure.
That's good. That's the best advice I could. I love that. Consistency is so important. And talent is one of those things where you naturally have it, and being consistent in effort. And that's huge. All right. This one's going to be fun. So if you could have coffee at a firehouse table, so in other words, you can ask any question or whatever you want to ask with 3 people that could be deceased or alive, who would those 3 people be and why?
Wow. It would be my father, who left me, many years ago, that, passed away many years ago. There were, now that I've had the benefit of service, and he was a World War II veteran in Patton's Third Army.
Oh, wow.
There were things I would like to ask him about his service and relate it to my service. He was killed. If you saw the movie Black Hawk Down, Super 6-1 was the first Black Hawk that was shot down.
Yep.
And the piloting, there were two lost. It was Cliff Walcott and Donovan Briley. They were both in my platoon, and we were close friends. In fact, my middle son is named Mitchell Walcott Hutmacher.
Oh.
I would sit down with Cliff. I still keep in touch with his son and his wife to this day, and just talk to him about our service together and what we experienced. And, you know, I lost just last 2 weeks ago, or I guess December 19th, there was one of my former commanders that I was with on the 16th, Friday night. I think it was, he passed away on a Monday. That Friday, he was a former 160th commander of about 4 before me. And, you know, he passed away suddenly. We were sitting there talking on Friday night about health and, you know, fitness and our memories together. And then Monday he dies. And I went to his memorial last Saturday. And I reflect on that, and there were so many things, if I would have known, and you never know, right? But if I would have known, and I had this opportunity that you're presenting, that I would have spent time with him sharing the positive impact he had on my life and so many other soldiers that served under his command.
Oh. All right. That's one of my favorite questions to ask. And wow, that's a great table to have. And I appreciate everything that you've done with your career and that you continue to do. You're making an impact on so many lives. And I definitely wish you the best, and I thank you so much for your time today.
Hey, Rob, thanks for having me on. I appreciate the opportunity. I really enjoyed chatting with you. It was relaxed, and I just thanks for this chance, especially to put in a plug for the mission I'm on now with the Special Ops Warrior Foundation. Very grateful for that.
Thanks for listening and supporting the Forged in the Fires podcast with Fireman Rob. Remember, don't forget to like and subscribe to this podcast, and please share this episode with a friend or family. To find out more about Fireman Rob or reach out about a question, go to www.firemanrob.com. Until next time, live your life forged in the fires.